Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today in our Ask Me Anything, focused on scaling your business into the U.S. Um, my name is Azar Janjua. I am the head of the Community Outpost program. Now, it's been a full year since the last U.S. election. President Biden has signed his hard-fought $1 trillion U.S. infrastructure deal into law on Monday. The market analysts are predicting a strong retail sales quarter as we head into Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Christmas, and New Year's. It's been a long but steady road to economic recovery in the United States. We have a deep interest in what's happening south of the border, as the U.S. is our largest trading partner for Canadian companies. And we at Community Outpost are seeing an incredible surge in hiring in the U.S. for the last 2 quarters. We at Outpost offer an employer of record solution where we help hire foreign talent and then assign the individuals back to our clients. So we support HR, finance teams with Canadian founders and provide payroll services, access to private health benefit coverage, and a strong 401k. Now, as the world economy recovers out of the pandemic, Canadian founders are strategically adding senior executives, sales, and marketing in the U.S. to drive incredible growth. They're casting a wide net and thinking big. We're starting to get comfortable with remote teams now. So now it seems the time to enter the U.S. market, sell and hire, and cast your net to hire the best and brightest, regardless of their geography. So we wanted to spend some time with you today and talk about growth in the U.S. What questions should you be asking? What resources are available to you? And most importantly, where is the talent? We're lucky enough to welcome both Tony Cristiano and Lee Farlow. Rebecca, I'll get you to switch to the next slide. Thank you. Both experts at market entry and hiring in the U.S. But before we welcome them, what I'd like to do is just set the stage a little bit. We've got a great group of participants today. We thank you again for joining. I'd like to just share my screen and have you work with us on a quick Mentimeter poll, so we can help set the stage for the speakers and give them a better idea of how to curate the message for you. All right, can you see my screen? There we go. So if you don't mind logging in either to menti.com and putting in the code, or grabbing your phone and scanning the QR code that we have. And I'll just quickly walk through just a few questions. So the first question is just on the general size of your organization. Do you consider yourself as a startup, a scale-up, or a more mature enterprise? So I can leave a few seconds for you to fill that out. All right, next question. How much of your offering involves software or digital technology? Great. Next question. How would you consider the state of your organization's U.S. market entry to date? Now, a few questions on talent and talent acquisition in the U.S. Do you currently have a presence? Do you have any people that you are using to help you in that in the U.S.? Thank you. And then final question is more of a word cloud. What are the questions that you are looking to have answered either at this session or in future sessions when it comes to the US? What are the things that are keeping you up at night? Okay, we got one big answer, and I don't know if I brought the right accountants for that to answer that question, but let's see what we have here. So I see compliance, partnership, market understanding, talent, legal. Okay, great. So we'll do our best to kind of talk through some of these issues and then obviously provide resources with lawyers and accountants to help answer additional questions as we go forward. All right, thank you so much for participating in that with us. I'm just going to unshare my screen now and introduce you to Tony. So Tony is the founder and managing partner of Pivotal Arc. He's a hands-on software and AI business leader with incredible corporate and entrepreneurial experience. He's been talking about helping companies grow into the U.S. He's been helping and doing seminars like this around the world. More recently at Haltech and in Ottawa. So we're really proud and happy that he was able to join us today and talk us through some of the things we should look at when entering the U.S. Tony, go ahead.
Wonderful, Zara. Thank you so much. Can you see my screen? I'm trying to share it. And can you hear me okay? Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. So, yes, my name is Tony Cristiano, as Azar said, and I'm a proud Canadian. I was born in Toronto, Canada, graduated from the University of Waterloo, backgrounds in computer science, spent 10 years at IBM Canada, and now live in sunny Los Angeles. Our company is experienced and focused on helping software companies and those in digital technologies. And our perspective today will be mostly on sales and marketing and USA market entry. The good news is there's lots and lots of opportunity, and I'll get into a little bit of that. But there's also a lot to think about. We're going to have a pretty lengthy Q&A period, but if in any event, if you'd like to contact me directly, feel free to contact me at tony@pivotlarc.com. So a little bit about you. We went through this. Most of you are startups. Most of you have software and digital technology as part of your core. And most of you have decided or are considering moving into the United States market. The truth of the matter is your business is unique and your journey is unique and your needs are unique, but hopefully this provides you a good platform upon which to build your interest and your knowledge about entering the US marketplace. Oh, here we go. So a little bit about Pivotal Arc. We're in the business of helping software and digital tech companies, startups, and scale-ups, and we help them enter the United States. We have a proven process where we assess the market problem that you might be trying to solve, your idea or innovation. We perform extensive market research interviews of your prospects and potential customers. We think about and test the opportunity and your USA market entry approach. And then one of the most critical steps and the services we provide is helping you close flagship sales, very important for building traction, and verifying to yourself that a real market does exist. And we help with your funding pitch, building channels, accelerating, and support you and the leadership team on this journey. So the software market overall is over $200 billion in 2021, and that's probably understated. It's probably a lot bigger than that, but that's some statistical data points that I'm using. And the startup costs are pretty low. It's a very exciting industry. You can get started with a laptop, an internet connection, and a garage or a bedroom. But at the same time, there's many disruptions and changes. So, many of you are familiar with computer vision, AR, virtual reality, mixed reality, meta, and the ability to do things through a camera and on video, artificial intelligence to help machines learn and help algorithms learn, big changes in big data and cloud computing, edge devices. And at the same time, it's just incredible the amount of new entrants in prototyping technology, low code, no code. So a lot of terminology, but the end result at that is that the opportunities are really endless. They're accelerating faster than ever before, and the investment appetite is very large. But at the same time, startups fail. Startups and scale-ups run into issues from time to time. The main reasons they cite when you poll them is they say, well, I ran out of cash, or I got out-competed, or I didn't find a market need. But in reality, when you look at the underlying common denominator, most of them failed because they didn't solve a real market problem that really needed solving. So the tendency for the technical community is to just build it, just build something. But what ends up happening, and I've seen a lot of people, quit their jobs, they build something they think the world needs, and then months or even years later, they realize there's no need. A recent McKinsey report said that entrepreneurs and CEOs fail because of the confirmation trap, meaning there's a confirmation bias. They want to build something and they seek data that shows that somebody needs it, as opposed to the other way around, and listening to customers and asking them questions. So you want to use a proven process that collects real evidence of success before you invest too heavily and before you enter the United States market. Very important. So why USA market entry? Why do so many people want to enter the USA market? Well, in general, companies want to scale up, but your reasons are unique. Some of you want larger markets, you want to pay the bills, impress owners or funders, increase your value for an exit, or increase the value for the next round of funding or your IPO. And so why do USA market entries fail? Well, there's a bias. People assume that what worked elsewhere or worked in Canada is going to automatically work in the United States. That's a fallacy. The problem is different. The ideas and innovation are not unique enough because there's a lot of competition, or they fail to verify through market research and talking to enough prospective customers. The opportunity took much longer to return on the investment, or there's one of the biggest reasons is there wasn't enough traction. There wasn't a flagship sale. So I'm just going to race through. We won't have time to go through all of these in detail, but it'll give you some meat for the Q&A, or to follow up and have a personal session with us. All right, I'm looking at the text here. All right, so let me go through this very, very quickly. This is normally a 30 or 40-minute presentation, but in the interest of your time and keeping it snappy and moving, I'm going to go through it, race through it. So here are the considerations for USA market entry. Some of you are starting up in Canada or have started up in Canada, have some traction in Canada, want to move to the United States. I just want to make a general note, because I saw a few questions that came in early. I just wanted you to know that tax regulations and legal requirements, even regulatory issues, may vary significantly by state and even by sector. So the laws in one state can be very different, and the tax treatments can be very different. So for today, we're going to go through sales and marketing perspective. And so what's most important? It's very important to think about the problem differently than the way you think about it today in Canada. The problem has the potential, the market problem, the customer problem, has the propensity to be very different. So it's important to choose a niche, and a very narrow niche. Why a narrow niche? Well, it's easier to study, to test, to build traction, especially at the beginning. You can always scale up later. And it's very important that you verify through research. A lot of startups and a lot of people getting into the industry want to build it and forget to talk to a lot of prospects. So it's important to get a third party to ask prospects open-ended questions about your idea, your innovation, and their problem, and how it's being met or not met today. So the fourth is look for opportunities, not only in sales, which is the tendency, but also in terms of risk mitigation. Can we use prototypes? Can we use a minimum viable product? Can we not even build a product yet, which is ideal? Go slow to go fast. How do we differentiate? How do we test? The other thing about software and digital technologies is that there's a lot of opportunities to iterate prototyping, iterate minimum viable product, alpha, beta. And then before the sale, there's proof of concept. So very important to listen, which sounds like common sense, but believe it or not, many people don't do enough of it. One of the most critical items on this list is building flagship sales. A flagship sale is when a customer parts with real money, and it's your evidence that there's potential for success. It's what investors are going to look for. Your funder is going to want evidence of success, that traction. Number 7, the prospect will need to visualize the whole solution. Yes, you're going to meet an unmet need. You're going to do something really cool. But what about their data? What about their integration? What about their process that exists today? What about their ultimate success? So they'll want to hear about that whole offering. You'll want a firm, and you'll want to pick a firm or a contractor that's dedicated to your journey and your success. That ramp up, that initial inertia takes a little bit of time, extra time and energy. The mistake that a lot of companies make outside of the US is they'll just throw it over the transom to a value-added reseller or someone in the space that already resells and does something, and they can't get that attention. So having that dedication is very important. Marketing can be very cost effective. What ends up working well, universally, but especially in the United States, is trade shows is a good place to network and learn. Get a partner pedestal to get started, low cost. Webinars work well, emails are low cost, and talking to a lot of people. Very low cost, and that can be very effective. We recommend using a firm that has a good network of relationships. There are many centers of influence, or what I call hubs, and go-to-market channels and partners. A couple of them that you'll need to build really early in the process. And the last point is be open-minded, be ready to pivot and change, be ready to get some help to gain funding after your traction, after your flagship sales. And we advocate for hiring well, hiring slowly, carefully, and effectively after the evidence has built and you're ready to invest. So in summary, there are lots of opportunities, lots of change, lots of money to be made, but there's lots to do. With a firm like Pivotal Arc, you'll need to assess the problem independently. Very often we look at the problem and the client problem, the market problem a certain way, but it's important to get independent views. Is it grounded in the customer? Does it align with your passion, which is a big cause of failure if it's not part of your core capability. Review the idea or innovation independently. Does it solve the unmet need? Does it do it uniquely compared to the US competition? Has it been and can it be verified through primary market research? Are we talking to enough prospects? Are we doing a couple of rounds of interviews? Are we doing a focus group? Again, on the opportunity side, sales is important, but can we lower the risk so we don't run out of cash flow or get discouraged? Can we use a prototype without even building a product? Is there a minimum viable product or a test we can do? Can we ultimately build attraction through a flagship sale? Get someone to really part with some cash and build that evidence. And then some advanced things to think about: funding after the traction, acceleration, and support for leadership. So I think I went a few minutes over time, but we do have a lengthy Q&A section coming up, and we hope to answer your questions that way. But we know your business is unique. We know that you're in different sectors, different stage, different thinking about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. So if we don't answer your questions, feel free to email me personally, and I'll do my best to get back to you very quickly.
Thank you very much, Tony. I
Yeah,
appreciate that. I'll throw one question at you before we invite Lee to the stage. It just came in. So what are the pros and cons if you're a software company that's domiciled in Canada, but you want to sell into the US market? What are the pros and cons of selling using your Canadian domiciled company as opposed to setting up a Delaware-based corp?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, as entrepreneurs, we want to do as much as we can in Canada. After all, we have our R&D, we have our customers, we have our product. But there are some issues with as soon as we do need employees, and we have to think about tax, we have to think about regulation, we have to think about the way we're perceived by the customer. You know, the cultural differences appear to be very large, even though we know they're not, between Canada and the US. So setting up locally is ultimately becoming very, very important, if not critical, to do. So what we recommend as an interim step is maybe use a contractor like Pivotal Arc or another contractor to step into that middle ground. So you have a local presence, but don't necessarily have to set up in Delaware or wherever you're going to set up. So great question, Azar. I hope that answers some of it or all of it.
Thank you very much. All right, now I'd love to welcome Lee Farlow to the stage. She's going to talk about U.S. talent, where the great, amazing talent is, and how to get access to them. We're feeling that a lot at Outpost, as I mentioned earlier. There are great Canadian founders that are finding senior executives, great engineers and salespeople in the U.S. So Lee is a partner at Artemis Canada. She's passionate about helping early stage companies find the right leaders and help them scale. Lee, I didn't tell you this before, but I actually spoke to one of your clients the other day, and they spoke so highly, not only of your ability to hire sales talent in the US, but they wanted me to let you know that your ability to hire engineers in Ontario, like the really smart people are here, they're working on amazing projects. And he was so proud to be working with you to be able to find those people. So thank you for that.
We appreciate that. Thank you, Azar. That's great to hear.
So I'll leave it over to you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Azar. And thank you, Tony. Perfect segue here. I'm excited to chat with you about talent. So just as a brief introduction about Artemis, if you're not familiar with us, we do focus on the tech sector. So as you filled in that poll, most of you, it sounds like, are startups or scale-ups. Tech is core to your business, and you're evaluating moving potentially and expanding to the US. So most of our clients are Canadian scale-ups. They are at an inflection point where they have clearly found product market fit, and now they're looking to grow and scale, and they use our help in finding the right leaders and key strategic hires. And while the majority, to Azar's point, of the leaders that we've placed are Canadian, more and more over the last few years, we've helped our clients with really specialized roles in looking remotely as well and in hiring across North America and beyond. So I'm looking forward to chatting with you just about why we have helped some of our clients hire in the US and some of our learnings, and then some key considerations from a recruitment standpoint too, because we know it's sometimes daunting to look outside of Canada where our network is, and I have some key tips for you around that. All right, so in starting off, I've highlighted here 5 scenarios that we've seen where looking into the US has made a lot of sense for our clients to really help complement their local teams and look at the US market as a competitive advantage. So starting off, to Tony's point too, in terms of looking at new market entry, we've found that having some local feet on the street and knowing the landscape can really help. Some examples of this have been, we've helped companies in placing their first US sales leader to break into the market. Or most recently, we actually helped a local AI and very advanced machine learning technology company hire their first European sales leader to break into that market. And we actually worked with Azara's team at Outpost in placing that leader. So it really helps sometimes to have that local knowledge to then land and expand from there. Secondly, domain experience. So an example here would be, we're working really closely with a company in the environmental and sustainability space. They have a software platform in ESG. ESG is known in Canada, but there are significant companies and competitors in the US. So we help them place their VP marketing in Chicago, actually, because we looked at where the industry experience was, and it happened to be in Chicago for this particular leader. Another example is, we're working with a company in the network management space, and 99% of their competitors are in the US. They, of course, are a Canadian company, so we help them place a product marketing leader in the US to bring in that domain experience and add value to the team. It really helps then with reducing their ramp up and adding value immediately to the organization. We also help in finding specific skill sets, and this is really core to what we do as recruitment specialists. So lots of examples here in looking at where the skill sets are, and oftentimes now in the last few years in particular, we've looked broadly to find the right skill sets. An example would be a recent VP engineering search we did with a scale up in the e-commerce space. And they were looking for a leader who had specific B2C experience and had also scaled from 10 million to 100 million, had managed remote, globally dispersed teams. So we happened to find that leader in Portland. Prioritizing D&I is a very important category, of course, and we really help coach our clients in being intentional about D&I. A recent client came to us, and in looking at their leadership team, they identified that gender diversity was not represented within the leadership group. So we really prioritized that when we looked for a VP CS for them. And same type of story, we looked at North America as a whole to widen the talent pool to really prioritize D&I, and ultimately did find someone in the US. And then lastly, adding a global perspective is really valuable. If your customers are global, then it definitely helps to have a team that reflects that mindset as well. In terms of some tactics, so for the most part, we've helped to place US employees. It sounds like from the poll, a few of your organizations have brought on contractors as well. We have helped in placing a few contractors, and I would be happy to chat further about the difference between bringing on an employee and a contractor in the Q&A section. But the short version of it is, if you're looking for someone to be with your company on a long-term basis, beyond just coming in for a short-term project, it helps to set them up as an employee. And there are 2 main ways to go about this, either setting up a US entity, which we find with our clients. Typically, they would want a critical mass of US hires first before looking to set this up. And to Tony's point, looking for that flagship sale and market traction and proven success to have taken place in the market first. Secondly, we've worked with EORs, such as Outposts, of course, in really partnering with Azar and his team. And the benefit of Outposts is they handle all of the legal, HR, payroll, tax obligations. They help you with benefits, and your offer letter, you inform the details, but it comes through Outposts. So it really helps to streamline the whole process for you. Once you're ready to go, in terms of different considerations for preparing for recruitment, I've touched on the difference between a contractor employer briefly, but definitely just making sure you're clear on the two differences and what it is that you need based on the scope and the amount of control that you're looking to have. With market research, it is important to understand the cultural differences. Even looking at the US, certain states, as an example, do not allow you to ask for historical compensation data. The way you can phrase it instead is asking a potential candidate what their expectations might be. So understanding those differences and understanding your budget going into the market can really help. And we're happy to have some sidebar chats with you too, just in understanding the market landscape and different compensation ranges for different roles. Looking at your pitch as well, you'll be going into a market where your brand will not necessarily be known. So it's an opportunity to tell your story and really think through your employer value proposition and what you'll be bringing to the table. And think about the role from the candidate's perspective too, in terms of what the selling features are, how much autonomy and impact they will have, and think through the role from their lens as opposed to your laundry list of requests from your job description. On that note too, think through your criteria. Oftentimes we have the must-haves and then we also have the nice-to-haves. And it's important to be clear on that before you start in your search too. And then defining the full interview process ahead of time too. It's a competitive market right now, to say the least, and many candidates, while they might start off as being passive, they quite quickly are involved in a few other search processes. So it's nice to be really efficient with your interview process and plan for that ahead of time. And lastly, just a few considerations in terms of your actual outreach once you're ready to go out and engage and share your message. Waterloo Region's brand resonates really well and it helps your story. So be prepared with resources to share, and the EDC and Communitech are great for that. We have a lot of great content to share to really promote the region and educate the international market as well. Many international employees are very familiar with University of Waterloo as an example, so it does resonate well. I've listed on the right side here just a couple of remote job boards to consider as you look to get your message out. And there are many associations too in every different region that you look at. So if you're looking at a specific state, look at the meetup groups, the conferences, the industry groups that are happening. I wanted to call out a few examples of that too. So if you're not familiar with CHIEF, it's an association specifically for VP level or C-level women in leadership roles, primarily in tech. So it's a great community. It's a private membership association with over 6,000 members. So a great resource to tap into. And C100 is a global community for Canadians, but 60% of the members are actually living outside of Canada. So it's great to connect with Canadian expats who might be keen to join a Canadian company again. Other considerations would be, it's again, no surprise that remote workforce trends are in our favor right now. A recent survey from Upwork mentioned that 1 out of 4 Americans will be working remotely in 2021 and beyond, and that number was closer to 7% in 2018. So the fact that your opportunity would be likely remote will resonate as well, most likely with the right individual. And with every incremental US hire, whether it's a contractor or employee, it helps the story too. So right now with one of our clients, now that they have 2 leaders in the US, it really helps us in potentially looking to bring on more hires for the team now that we can say it's a proven model and there are currently Americans on the team. Okay, so I will stop there, and I have more content to share if we get to it in the Q&A, but I want to make sure that we leave time for your questions.
I'll ask a question to Lee. So Lee, as we saw from the poll, the majority of registrants today are high growth scaling software companies out of Canada. What is the best way for them to attract an American citizen, though, to work for them as a Ontario or Canadian-based organization?
Mm-hmm. I think a few things, and it's a great question. It really needs to be a message that resonates well. So a very tailored message when you're reaching out to someone around what about their background and their experience could be an interesting fit for your organization, and being really crystal clear on your pitch too, and where you're at as an organization. So we tell new stories every day to Americans and Canadians for that matter too. And it's flattering to receive a message and a message that is really tailored to their background. So I would say, I know it's daunting to reach out to someone out of the blue, but don't be put off by that. It really resonates well when you reach out with that tailored note and really share, where you're at as an organization and what the pitch is, what's compelling about the opportunity and growth story ahead.
Can I add something to that, Leonazar? The labor market is very, very competitive here. So as Lee correctly pointed out, the pitch is important. One of the most important things in the pitch, especially for startups, is evidence of success and your traction. So those that are in high demand, especially in tech, will ask questions like, well, what have you done? Where is your product? Has it been evolved? Has it been embedded in customers? Where's the evidence that it's starting to grow and that you'll be around for a few years? So similar to what we're trying to do in the marketplace is for the employee or the prospective employee, you have to have that same evidence of success that the company's going to not fold up and leave. So it's everything Lee said, plus what you have to do to just prove that you have traction.
And then Tony, when you were looking at developing a sales channel in the US, right? Obviously, the option is to hire a salesperson in the US and go look for leads. That's one option. But earlier in your presentation, you mentioned that there are other organizations, other partners that can help you land that strategic or flagship first customer. But how does a scaling software company find a partner like that? Where do you start?
Yeah, very good question. Pivotal Arc does exactly that. So we not only build the plan, but we actually execute it and help build the flagship sale with you and your firm in Canada. There aren't that many firms that do it end to end. There's many firms that will do the strategy, will charge you for the research, will help you network, but there aren't that many that are capable of doing it all the way through. Where would you look for those kind of clients? I guess tapping into the network, maybe some of those that build the strategy for you might be able to, if they're not going to build a flagship sales, they might point to a few organizations like Pivotal Arc that'll finish the process for you. So starting with those companies that build strategy, maybe do bits and pieces like the market research, they might be able to point to companies that could help them with the sale.
We've got about 5 minutes as we're approaching 3 o'clock. I wanted to open up the chat again. If there's any additional questions, please throw them into the Q&A, which we can address. I'll go back to some of the previously submitted questions. One I'll try to answer myself if I can. So somebody had asked, Greg, you had asked about what type of tax and accounting planning does a Canadian company need to do in order to expand and establish yourself in the US? So what we did at Outpost is you have to set up an entity in the US. You need to set up, tax registration and EIN number for employees. You would want to set up a registration in the individual states that you're doing business. And so a lot of that can be done by cross-border lawyers and accountants. We work with a few here, Gowlings, Phillips Lytle, Deloitte. So if you ever need any introductions along those lines, let us know. Your founder success manager can help make that introduction. But there's a lot of organizations that can kind of help you work through the different steps as you establish a permanent establishment. And alternatively, there are other options if you don't want to establish in the US just yet. Tony, another question for you. Does a company need to have their product finished before going to the US market and starting their market entry? What are your thoughts?
That's a very, very good question. The tendency of us technologists, or a lot of folks that build software, is they feel like they have to have a complete software product and demonstrate it. But that's a fallacy. You do not need a finished product. In fact, it's recommended that you don't. Why? Because as an entrepreneur, you get enamored with what you built. But what we should be enamored with is the customer and the prospect. What is it they need? How do they want it? How will we be different? So very often it's very strategic to not have a product, have maybe a prototype, have maybe an outline, have many discussions, and have those prospects steer you away from the competition and towards your strength of what you're going to do. So the net of it is, it's a great question, and it's an advantage not to have a product at the beginning. You can always build it later. So that's what we recommend. There's many times when people show up with a product, doesn't meet a need, and the software is hard to change. You know, the amount of architecture, the amount of maintenance, changes become very expensive to do later.
And Lee, on the hiring side, are there any specific US states that you're getting a sense are more popular than others when it comes to either top-level sales or top-level engineering talent?
We've placed a lot of leaders in Boston, and one of the learnings we've had there is compensation levels are just more reasonable, I would say. It's more or less the same number, just different conversion, of course, with Canadian USD. We've placed leaders in Oregon, we've placed individuals in Chicago. So we've focused mostly on the main tech hubs. We've had a lot of luck in North Carolina, Florida. California is a hit or a miss, as I think a lot of us can relate to. Incredible talent, of course. It's just, it's more expensive. So that's a consideration for any client looking to look at California. Usually we like to supplement California with other states too, so that we can have different comparisons. We've placed leaders in New York as well. So a real range, but focus mostly on the largest tech hubs.
And then why hire a senior leader in the US as opposed to just hiring a senior leader in Canada and having them fly to the US every once in a while?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's another good question. Traveling hasn't been an option lately, so I think that's perhaps one consideration, but it's nice to see that opening up slowly. For the most part, we've placed US leaders where we're looking at that specific skill set. So we first have looked at the Canadian market to see if that skill set exists in Canada. And if it doesn't, that's when we would look to the US market to find a complementary skill set that we maybe don't have locally, because it can really complement and add to just the diversity of the network that this individual can bring if they are in the US. So I think depending on the role, if it's an opportunity where that trust is there, you're working with a Canadian team and you have someone on the team who is keen to travel to the US or actually relocate, that's fantastic. But most of the searches that we've done are net new hires in the US as opposed to relocating someone, because we're looking for that specific skill set or domain.
Fantastic. All right, we're kind of getting to the top of the hour. I'll reiterate that Lee, Tony, and I, and Christina from Artemis will kind of take little office hours in a side room. If anybody would like to have any specific conversations with us, let us know, or we'll also send you our details. Tony, Lee, did you have any closing remarks?
Well, first of all, thank you for your time. It is a very exciting market. There's huge opportunity in software and digital technologies, and the appetite for funding ideas is incredible. So it's a really good time to have this discussion, and I thank you all for your time.
Thanks, everyone. And we're happy to support Canadian companies to compete on a global level. So if hiring in the US means widening that pool to use talent as your competitive advantage, we're happy to chat with you afterwards too about some different strategies.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much for presenting, Lee and Tony. And thanks to all of you for coming today. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great rest of your day.